Shalom, Yashala, Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to the Most High, Yahweh. I do so in the name of His only begotten Son, Yahweh Shai. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Yasharallah. Kol Holoyim La Yahweh Bahashim Yahweh Shai Bahashim Harakak Wadash, for blessing our elders with the spirit of truth so that we may know. Shout out to the Akim and the Akwaf that's keeping the faith in the works. Y'all keep at it. It's your brother Abai coming at you with more precepts. This is the book of John, chapter 10, verse 22. It says, "And it was at Jerusalem, the feast of the dedication, and it was winter, and Yahushua walked in the temple in Solomon's porch." Right. Today is the first day of the feast of dedication, and the feast of dedication is holy days, high holy days, right? Because it's more than just one day. Right? It goes for 8. So, sundown today, Thursday, all the way up until sundown Friday, right, is the feast of dedication, right? So, just a little history on your culture, you so-called blacks, you so-called Hispanics, so-called Native Americans, and all our brethren around the world, all of so-called Negro descent, right? So let's get into it. Let's go to the book of 2 Chronicles, chapter 7, and verse 1. It says, "Now when Solomon had made an end of praying, the fire came down from heaven and consumed the burnt offering and the sacrifices, and the glory of Yahweh filled the house. And the priest could not enter into the house of Yahweh, because the glory of Yahweh had filled Yahweh's house. And when all the children of Yasharallah saw how the fire came down and the glory of Yahweh upon the house, they bowed themselves with their faces to the ground upon the pavement and worshipped and praised Yahweh, saying, For he is good, for his mercy endureth forever. Then the king and all the people offered sacrifices before Yahweh, and King Solomon offered a sacrifice of 22,000 oxen and 120,000 sheep. So the king and all the people dedicated the house of power, and the priests waited on their offices, the Levites also with instruments of music of Yahweh, which David or Dawadah Hamalak, Dawadah the king, had made to praise Yahweh, because his mercy endureth forever. When David praised by their ministry, right, and the priests sounded trumpets before them, and all Israel stood." It says, "Moreover, Solomon hallowed the middle of the court that was before the house of Yahweh, for there he offered burnt offerings and the fat of the peace offerings, because the brazen altar which Solomon had made was not able to receive the burnt offerings and the meat offerings and the fat." Right? Also at the same time, Solomon kept the feast 7 days, and all Israel with him, a great congregation from the entering in of Hamath unto the river of Egypt. And in the 8th day they made a solemn assembly, for they kept the dedication of the altar 7 days, and the feast 7 days. Right? So the Most High ordained King Solomon to build this house, right? Because King David, he did what he did, and King David wanted to build that house, but the Lord said, "No, your son gonna build a house for me," and he did. And when he built it, Yahweh blessed that thing with fire from heaven, and we just read, right? So fast forward, right? Israel fell off. We all know what happened to Solomon, right? We split. Got the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom, and we going through some things, right? We going in and out of captivities, right? And we ultimately end up in Greece. So let's see. Mm, go to First Maccabees, chapter 1, and verse 17. All right, we end up in Greece, and the Grecians is telling us that basically it's against the law for us to be us, right? And they are now implementing these things. They coming to our people, coming to our mighty men, and trying to persuade them to bow, right, to bend, right, and ultimately to break, and not follow the customs of our fathers, but follow the customs of their people and their heathen idols, right? So let me see. First Maccabees chapter 1 and verse 17 says, "Wherefore he entered into Egypt." Let me see. We'll go 1:16. It's a lot. Now, when the kingdom was established before Antiochus, right, he thought to reign over Egypt that he might have the dominion of two realms. Wherefore he entered into Egypt with a great multitude, with chariots and elephants and horsemen and a great navy, and made war against Ptolemy, king of Egypt. But Ptolemy was afraid of him and fled, and many were wounded to death. Right? It says, thus they got the strong cities in the land of Egypt, and he took the spoils thereof. And after that Antiochus had smitten Egypt, he returned again in the 143rd year and went up against Israel and Jerusalem, right, with a great multitude, and entered proudly into the sanctuary, and took away the golden altar, and the candlestick of light, and all the vessels thereof, and the table of the shewbread, and the pouring vessels, and the vials, and the censers of gold, and the veil, and the crowns, and the golden ornaments that were before the temple, all which he pulled off. He took also the silver and gold, and the precious vessels. Also he took the hidden treasures which he found. And when he had taken all away, he went into his own land, having made a great massacre, and spoken very proudly. Therefore there was great mourning in Israel in every place where they were. Right? So this dude then came and wrecked shop, man. He came into the sanctuary and just tore stuff up, stole things, just like the devil does. Right? Just like the devil does. This devil that we speaking about, the same devil that's ruling the day. Right? But it says, I'm gonna go to First Maccabees chapter 3 and verse 1. It says, actually, Salat. Let me go back. Salat, 1 second. All right, Salat. So Antiochus came, did his thing, took everything, profaned the temple, and I mean it got bad, man. Like he got really bad. I'm not even going into full detail about the things that these devils did to the sanctuary and to us, but they did some foul stuff, man. Right, some real foul stuff. Right. So it says, First Maccabees chapter 2 verse 12, and behold, our sanctuary, even our beauty and our glory, is laid waste, and the Gentiles have profaned it. Right, it says, to what end, therefore, shall we live any longer? Then Mattathias and his sons rent their clothes and put on sackcloth and mourn very sore. This dude Mattathias is important because he's the father of the Maccabees, right? These Levites who, man, when I tell you they weren't playing the radio, they were not playing at all, right? So it says, in the meanwhile, the king's officers, such as compelled the people to revolt, came into the city, molding to make them sacrifice. And when many of Israel came unto them, Mattathias also and his sons came together. Then answered the king's officers and said to Mattathias on this wise, thou art a ruler and honorable and great man in this city, and strengthened with sons and brethren. Right, it says, now therefore come thou first and fulfill the king's commandment, like as all the heathen have done, yea, and the men of Judah also, and such as remain at Jerusalem, so shalt thou and thine house be in the number of the king's friends, and thou and thy children shall be honored with silver and gold and many rewards. So that man trying to get Mattathias to sell out. Basically, that's what he's saying. Go tell your people that you're rocking with us, and we're gonna give you all of these different things, all this won't do won't. We're gonna give you status and all that, right? Just like today, how they go to the celebrities and say, "Well, y'all go tell the people this, that, and the third, and we'll give y'all this, that, and the third," right? But this is what Mattathias said. Then Mattathias answered and spake with a loud voice, like he clicked on their ass. Says, "Thou though all the nations that are under the king's dominion obey him and fall away every one from the religion of their fathers and give consent to his commandments, yet will I and my sons and my brethren walk in the covenant of our fathers. Power forbid that we should forsake the law and the ordinances. We will not hearken to the king's words to go from our religion either on the right hand or the left." Now when he had left speaking these words, there came one of the Jews in the sight of all to sacrifice on the altar, which was at Modin according to the king's commandment. So after Mattathias straight clicked on this, man, some sellout coon ass nigga decided to walk past this man after that man said all of that inspiring stuff and go sacrifice, whatever it is this dude wanted, the people to sacrifice for the king. All right. Says, wait a minute. Verse 24 says, which thing when Mattathias saw, he was inflamed with zeal, and his reins trembled. Neither could he forbear to shew his anger according to judgment. Wherefore he ran and slew him upon the altar. Also the king's commissioner who compelled men to sacrifice, he killed at that time, and the altar he pulled down. So that's the beginning of these wars. Mattathias couldn't take no more, especially when the coon, after this man had poured out his heart and spoke directly, expressly from the spirit to this man, to his face, to let him know what the Most High's people were really about. He couldn't take no more, right? And just snapped, but it was all spiritual, right? Because this was the beginning of the war. This was the beginning of what this whole lesson is about, right? Leading up to the Feast of Dedication, right? Because it's a reason why it's called Feast of Dedication, right? We kind of sort of went over it in Second Chronicles, but this is the ultimate of it. That's the beginning of it. This is the ultimate of it because it started with Solomon building the house, period, right? And now you got these heathens stepping into our house, pulling things down and putting their stuff in place of. It sound familiar, right? If you got an eye to see and an ear to hear, right? Because we are that temple. And them devils came and stole us and took everything out of our temple and gave us idols, gave us black, African American, all the other things, right? And once the spirit of the Most High came inside of us, right, and that light started to shine in us, right? Come on, man. Scripture says all of these things are written for our learning, right? Anyway, so let's go to First Maccabees chapter 3, verse 1. So Mattathias died, right? He died a mighty man, in fact. And Judas Maccabees took his stead. And it says in First Maccabees chapter 3 and verse 1, then his son Judas called Maccabeus rose up in his stead, and all his brethren helped him, and so did all they that held with his father, and they fought with cheerfulness the battle of Israel. So he got his people great honor, and put on a breastplate as a giant, and girt his warlike harness about him, and he made battles protecting the host with his sword. In his acts he was like a lion, and like a lion's whelp roaring for his prey. For he pursued the wicked, and sought them out, and burnt up those that vexed his people. All right. So he was a mighty man, and the Most High blessed him to be so. And everybody that was vexing his people, he let them have it. Right? Fast forward to today, the Most High Spirit is in his men to let the people know who's been vexing the Most High's people what time it is, cutting them with the sword, which is the word. Right? Now let's go to the book of 1 Maccabees chapter 4 and verse 36. I'm kind of reading fast for a reason, because if I read normal speed, this thing would probably go about an hour. Right? So hopefully you keeping up and you can understand what's being said. So let's go. 1 Maccabees chapter 4 and verse 36 says, Then said Judas and his brethren, Behold, our enemies are discomfited. Let us go up to cleanse and dedicate the sanctuary. So Judas been doing his thing, and it led up to this ultimate battle. And in this battle, right, they were really outnumbered, right, outgunned and all that. And the Lord was with them, right, and allowed Judas and his brethren to not only beat these cats, in this battle, but have them flee in time enough for them to fix up the sanctuary. Right? So it says, verse 37, Upon this all the hosts assembled themselves together and went up into Mount Zion. And when they saw the sanctuary desolate, and the altar profaned, and the gates burned up, and shrubs growing in the courts as in a forest, or in one of the mountains, yea, Salah. Let me see. As in a forest, or in one of the mountains, yea, and the priest's chambers pulled down. They rent their clothes and made great lamentation and cast ashes upon their heads, right? And fell down flat to the ground upon their faces and blew an alarm with the trumpets and cried towards Salah and cried towards heaven. Then Judas appointed certain men to fight against those that were in the fortress until he had cleansed the sanctuary. So he chose priests of blameless conversation, such as had pleasure in the law, who cleansed the sanctuary and bare out the defiled stones into an unclean place. And when as they consulted what to do with the altar of burnt offerings, which was profane, they thought it best to pull it down, lest it should be a reproach to them, because the heathen had defiled it, wherefore they pulled it down, and laid up the stones in the mountain of the temple in a convenient place, until there should come a prophet to shew what should be done with them. Right? Then they took whole stones according to the law and built a new altar according to the former, and made up the sanctuary and the things that were within the temple, and hollowed the courts. Salah. They made also new holy vessels, and into the temple they brought the candlesticks, and the altar of burnt offerings, and of incense, and the table. And upon the altar they burnt incense, and the lamps that were upon the candlesticks they lighted, that they might give light in the temple. All right. Furthermore, they set loaves upon the table and spread out the veils and finished all the works which they had begun to make. Now on the 25th day of the 9th month, which is called the month Caslu, in the 148th year, they rose up betimes in the morning and offered sacrifice according to the law upon the new altar of burnt offerings which they had made. It says, look at what time and what day the heathen had profaned it, even in that it was dedicated with songs and citherns and harps and cymbals, just like in 2 Chronicles, right? It says, then all the people fell upon their faces, worshiping and praising the power of heaven, who had given them good success, just like in 2 Chronicles. Right? It says, and so they kept the dedication of the altar 8 days, and offered burnt offerings with gladness, and sacrificed the sacrifice of deliverance and praise. They decked also the forefront of the temple with crowns of gold and with shields, and The gates and the chambers they renewed and hanged doors upon them. Thus was there very great gladness among the people, for that the reproach of the heathen was put away. Right? Just like today. The Most High is putting that reproach of the heathen away from us. Yes, we die daily, and yes, we have to run this race, and yes, we have to fight the good fight. But each day that goes by, each day that we get closer to this place being done, right, is us getting more and more clean until ultimately we are seen pure, like it says in the scriptures, right? But it says, let me see. Verse 59, moreover, Judas and his brethren with the whole congregation of Yasharallah ordained that the days of the dedication of the altar should be kept in their season from year to year by the space of 8 days from the 25th day of the month Caslu with mirth and gladness. That's the difference between 2 Chronicles 7 and 1 Maccabees. 2 Chronicles 7 is Solomon built the temple, the Most High did his thing. We celebrated for seven days, and on the 8th day was a solemn assembly, meaning it was dead serious, right? Because we were dedicating on the sanctuary, right? The heathens came and did their thing with it, and the Most High allowed our forefathers to take that thing back, rededicate it, right? And from that point forward, the Most High put the spirit on the Maccabees to say, hey, this is what we're going to do from year to year. Right? We're going to have a feast of dedications. And this feast of dedication is going to last for 8 days. Right? It says, 1 Maccabees chapter 4 and verse 60, at that time also they builded up the Mount Zion with high walls and strong towers round about, lest the Gentiles should come and tread it down as they had done before. And they set there a garrison to keep it, and fortified Beth Surah to preserve it, that the people might have a defense against Idumea, just like today. Right? 2nd Ezra 6 and 9, for Esau is the end of the world, Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth. Right? We are now that temple that's being rebuilt and that's being cleansed. Right? Let me go to let me see where I want to go. Let me go to the book of 1 Corinthians. 1 Corinthians chapter 6 and verse 19 says, what? Know ye not that your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit, which is in you, which ye have of power, and ye are not your own? Right? For ye are bought with a price, therefore glorify power in your body and in your spirit, which are powers. Right? We are their temple. We are their sanctuary. Right? And the Most High has taken down those stones, taken down that idol altar and built up anew to Him. Right? Each day that altar gets more and more complete. Right? But at the end of the day, hey, that's what it's all about, man. The Feast of Dedication, man. Our forefathers, the Maccabees, and the exploits of our forefathers, man. Our forefathers we've done some awesome things on this earth. Right? Let me go to the book of Sirach, and I'll close out with this, I suppose, if the Most High wanted. So, Sirach 44, and let me see. Verse 1, it says, let us now praise famous men and our fathers that begat us. Yahweh hath wrought great glory by them through his great power from the beginning, such as did bear rule in their kingdoms, men renowned for their power, giving counsel by their understanding, and declaring prophecies, leaders of the people by their counsels, and learning meet for the people. Right, good for the people, wise and eloquent in their instructions. All right, this is where we come from. These are the people that we come from. Right, even though this devil tried to tell us that we were swinging in trees and we were uncivilized and so forth and so on, all this utter nonsense that this devil keeps spewing out as it pertains to so-called blacks and so-called Hispanics and so-called Native Americans, right? And all our brethren around the world, right? Like they just swooped in and, blessed us with civilization. No, it's the other way around, right? But at the end of the day, yeah, like I said, that's what this Feast of Dedication is all about. And it goes on for 8 days, and like I said, Thursday sundown is the beginning of it, and Friday sundown is the end of it. So, like, have a good one, man. Right? Shalom. Right? So Yahweh Shema Shai these precepts in this video were edifying. Kol Haloyim La Yahweh Bahashim Yahweh Shai Bahashim Harakah Kodash. Shalom Yashalom.